If you're like me, you woke up this morning with a myriad of emotions of anger, confusion, discouragement, sadness. One of the things that I've been taught over the years in counseling, particularly couples counseling, is that when a couple is in the midst of a heated conflict, that there's not going to be a lot of progress made because no one is listening. No one is listening. In the heat of conflict, they are only reacting to their pain. And so the best you can do as a counselor in that situation is to try to de-escalate things and maybe agree that it's important to find a better way, and then, decide on another time, upon another time, to return and to begin addressing the issues that will lead to the healing of that relationship. Now, hear me. It's not that those issues aren't important. They are hugely important. It's not that some changes don't need to take place, because nothing's ever going to change if changes aren't made. But the couple is just not in a place where they can hear and receive it. I thought about that as I turned on the news and went on social media this morning. And I'll admit to you that I went to my favorite news sources that I knew were going to say the things that I wanted to hear. And my reaction on social media was to get riled up at the people who were posting the things that I disagreed with, or to get riled up in another way by the people who were posting things with which I agreed. And so I turned it off, because what I saw was people going immediately into their default of playing the blame game. Gandhi famously said, "An eye for an eye leaves the whole world blind." And listen, I do believe there is such a thing as righteous anger. I mean, we say that Jesus had righteous anger in the temple, right? But you and I, we ain't Jesus. And what we mostly indulge ourselves in is a self-righteous anger. And I know for a fact, anger can feel powerful and get all those endorphins in our brain pumping and make us feel better for a while. And for a while, it makes us feel powerful, but it's not going to lead anywhere. At least it's not going to lead anywhere good. When my kids would get in fights when they were young, and Teresa and I would come in and try to referee, they would be mad and yelling and stuff. And they say things, like, "Well, she started it," or, "Well, yeah, I know I did that, but they did this. And what they did was so much more worse than what I did." And they'd even give a justification for what they did by saying, "Yeah, I know I did that, but I was angry," as if anger was an excuse for bad behavior. And that's the exact same thing I'm seeing in the news and on social media. And so when my kids would be in those kind of conflicts, Teresa and I would respond in the same way that I'm sure you did with your kids, and my parents did with me and my siblings, and their parents did with them. We'd say, "Stop. This needs to stop now. I don't care who started it. It just needs to stop." And then we'd fall back to those old adages that my parents taught us and their parents taught them. And we'd say things like, "Listen, two wrongs don't make a right. She's your sister. He's your brother. You can't treat each other this way." I mean, that's the kind of things we would say. Sure, it's what you would say to your kids too. Why? Because we were the parents. We were the adults in the room. And that's what you teach your children, right? I mean, I hope so. That is the tradition that we pass down generation to generation, because those are our values. So here's the thing. We know how to be adults. I mean, I believe that. Now is a time for us to stand up and be adults. Running to our ideological corners and yelling at each other and throwing rocks across the room is not going to change anything. Now, I do believe very much there needs to come a time, and I do agree that it needs to be sooner than later, when we do need to do a post-mortem on yesterday and try to figure out what went wrong where and hold people accountable, and then make the kind of changes and do the kinds of things that will bring about societal changes, that will bring wholeness and healing, that will make our country, our communities, our churches, our families strong. But like those people I talked about earlier who were in couple counseling and they're at the height of conflict with their emotions running raw, today might just not be that day. Today might just not be that day. I mean, the day is coming that a lot of things need to be addressed, but today probably isn't that day. And so what I want to say is, instead of running to our ideological corners and picking up our stones to throw across the room, today might just be a day we need to instead retreat to our prayer closets and pray for our country, pray for our leaders, and pray for ourselves. It's time for us all to do a lot of self-examination and ask God to reveal to us, what is it that we are doing? What is it that I have been doing that might be contributing to the problem that is causing this division? I mean, I know that will be my prayer today. None of us are perfect, but our words matter. The things we say, the things we post, they matter. You know, and at the end of the day, you're probably not going to ever change the mind of that person that you so vehemently disagree with, whom with you were so mad for that thing they said or that thing they posted. But with God's help, we can change ourselves. So let's work on that. You know, I add that it's almost a guarantee that you will never change that person's mind with words of anger and accusation. But you might just get your message across if you approach the conversation with humility and compassion, seeking first to understand, then to be understood. In the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus said, "You have heard that it was said, 'Love your neighbor and hate your enemy.' But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, that you may be children of your Father in heaven." Listen, unity does not mean uniformity. Sometimes we get that all mixed up and mistake one for the other. Unity doesn't mean uniformity. We're never all going to agree on everything. And there will be some with whom we will disagree vehemently. But how we treat one another is a much higher value than always having to be right. Let me close with this. As Teresa and I were talking this morning, she reminded me of those words from Psalm 19:14. "Let the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer." And those are good words for us all. God bless.